Government is hoping to secure a deal with the independent power producers to avert the shutdown of power plants by Saturday. In less than 48 hours, all power plants operated by the independent power producers will be shut down if government fails to pay 30% of the $1.73 billion owed these power producers. This afternoon, Joy News has picked information on a directive by the IPPs chamber to its members. What does this particular directive say? Now, it says each IPP must nominate nothing at 0 nominations and not declare an availability to the system operator beginning July 1 to July 8, 2023. Now, it continues to say that we'll try and so that's the information there. Already 3 of the IPPs have shut down operations. We'll try and bring you an update on a meeting between government and the IPPs aimed at averting the shutdown. Will there be a deal this afternoon? We wait to see. Right now, though, let's bring you a breakdown of the energy situation in Ghana today and the impact a withdrawal by the IPPs will have on power supply to your home. Now, if you look at the energy sector debt in Ghana, the total debt is $2 billion, out of which the IPPs are owed $1.7 billion. So that is how it is. How many plants do we have? We have a total of 9 plants in Ghana, out of which 6 of them are operating, with 3 already shut down. Now, when it comes to the capacity they have, for the IPPs, they have an installed capacity of 4,132 megawatts, out of which the hydro component makes up 38%, with the 61% of it being thermal component. Now, solar component has less than 1. So, in terms of electricity generation in Ghana, we have 22,051 gigawatt per hour, out of which we consume 18,067 gigawatt per hour. And this is from Gridco and ECG. Meanwhile, the minority on the Mines and Energy Committee in Parliament say they will not hesitate to hold the finance minister before Parliament if government fails to secure a deal with the IPPs. Let's do more on that. Joining us is Ishmael Ejekumhene, Executive Director of the Kumasi Institute of Technology and Environment, KITE. He will be joining us for a conversation on this to find out what could be our options or the options on the table as government is engaging these IPPs in order to avert a possible shutdown, because the IPPs gave the warning some time ago that if 30% of the debt government owes the IPPs is not paid, they will be forced to shut down end of this month. So by tomorrow, we expect that after tomorrow, this power plant will shut down. But government also says it is doing everything it can. Now, earlier, our sources within government, sources close to a high-ranking officers in government told us that they are already on the brink of securing agreement with some of them to ensure that these power producers do not go down. But joining us now is Ishmael Ejekumhene, Executive Director for the Kumasi Institute of Technology and Environment, KITE. Grateful to you, sir, for joining us. First of all, what's your reading of the directive to the IPPs that they shouldn't nominate anybody to present power to the government if the 30% is not paid?
Good afternoon to your viewers. That would be unfortunate. It would just mean that we're going to be in a crisis because we don't have enough generation capacity without the IPP. So if none of them nominates, out of the total of about 3,700 thermal installations that we have, it's only about 30% that is government owned. BRA owned. If you throw in Ameri, it's 35% because now Ameri belongs to the government. So good 65% of the thermal generation assets are actually owned by the IPPs, and they are major contributors to our daily energy mix. So if they don't dispatch from 1st July, then we're going to be in serious trouble. But as I told you some couple of days ago, I honestly believe that they will find a solution to it's good that at least they are now talking because I doubt if government will be able to raise the 30% they're asking for. That's in excess of 500 million US dollars. If they haven't made any payment now, I don't think they'll be able to make that payment before July 1. So it's good that they are now talking. Hopefully, they'll be able to come to some agreement and they won't shut down the system.
Well, the IPPs are asking their members not to nominate any power available, and they say zero nomination to the power sector. What does it mean if they say zero nomination for people like us who don't really understand these terms?
Basically, no one is going to turn their plants on. There will be no generation. I mean, normally because of planning, GRIDCO will need to check on the availability and they will nominate to tell them that they are available to dispatch. So zero nomination means that we are not available. And basically, they're not going to turn on the generator. So that's what it means.
Confident that they will probably reach an agreement. What's the source of your confidence that possibly we won't have shutdowns?
I shudder to think that there wouldn't be an agreement because you recall that 2-3 weeks ago, the Minister of Energy told us when they commissioned the bulk supply point at the Graphic Road, the Accra area, that there will be no doom zone. Okay, so this could be an indirect way of plunging the country into doom zone because, like I said, if you look at our thermal generation assets, the bulk of that, close to 70%, are owned by the IPPs. So without them, we have the available capacity is still less than the peak load, which is hovering between 2,500, 2,800, maximum 3,000 megawatts on a daily basis. So without those plants running, we're going to have to shed load. And that will only mean plan, schedule outages, taking down some units, depriving some areas of power. So I just don't want to believe that they're going to turn off the clocks come Saturday, July 1. I expect that they will be able to agree, work out something. Definitely, I doubt if they can also find the 30%, which is if we are owing them 1.7 billion US dollars, that's close to about a little over 500 million US dollars. And I doubt if they'll be able to find that money for them, but I believe they will come to some compromise. I pray that I'm not proven wrong, but I don't think anybody in government is going to allow this thing to happen. I'll be very surprised if it happens.
But how did we get here in the first place for government to owe these people over $1.7 billion when, of course, everybody who uses power in this country pays for that power consumption?
So unfortunately, that's something that I'm happy you bringing this up. Part of the debt is for some of the unutilized capacity, the one that we call redundant capacity or excess capacity. That one, they don't come into what we call the supply plan, which is what the PURC uses to determine the tariff. So for the unutilized capacity, it's the Ministry of Finance that is supposed to pay directly to the IPPs. But for the ones that we're supposed to pay for, unfortunately, we as consumers, we are not doing too well. I mean, ECG itself and the distribution companies, the regulator allows, or based on the regulatory benchmarks, they are supposed to bill and collect 98% of the power they buy. Okay. Averagely, they are doing sometimes as low as 70%, sometimes 65%. So the debt is really not only the unutilized capacity, but their inability to either bill and collect all the power that they buy from the IPP. So consumers are also part of the problem, and we shouldn't just say that this is government owing IPPs. Government really doesn't owe the IPPs apart from those idle capacity that they're supposed to agree to pay directly to the IPPs. But for the ones that we consume, it's a combination of our own attitude towards paying our bills and also the utilities, distribution utilities' ability to also collect or even bill the electricity that they take from these IPPs through Gridco and collect their money. Their collection rate is nowhere near the 98% that the regulator expects them to collect. So it's a combination of factors. Mind you, a few years ago, all the debt, the legacy debt had been paid for. The IPPs themselves said they paid for all the legacy debt. These are fairly recent debts that are piled up to the $1.7 billion that we're talking about. Every day that we are not able to do 100% collection, we are in trouble because the debt will keep adding up.
But once we know what our challenges are, why aren't we able to then seal the loopholes to ensure that we don't find ourselves in this situation? So what must we do going forward?
Maybe ECG will be the best entity to explain this, but basically we need to do more. We need to make sure that everybody is metered, and we need to make sure that everybody pays for the electricity they use, including government agencies and departments and ministries. They should all pay. Those who are not already on a prepaid metering system, we need to make sure that we all pay. But a lot of the challenge, a lot of the issues will rest with the major distribution companies who are the key off-takers. They buy the power in bulk and they sell it to us. They need to make sure that everybody is captured, everybody pays. In fact, first and foremost, they need to be able to bill for every energy they take, which means that if you're on credit meters, you have to receive your bills and be able to also pay within the stipulated 30 days. Many people are stealing power, and we need to find a way of arresting all of that. If we don't do that, I mean, we can clear this debt, but at this rate, we may soon find ourselves in a situation where we're owing the IPPs. Mind you, it's not only the IPPs that we are owing. A lot of entities within the value chain are being owed. I believe ECG owes Gridco, and all these problems we have. We need to make sure that the distribution sector is functioning the way they are supposed to function. Otherwise, this problem keeps coming. And part of it requires some more investments, but a lot of them, the non-technical losses, really, we can do something about them.
Which means that if we are able to deal with the technical losses and theft in the system, we are probably halfway through our challenges. And I'm sure once you know, the people who are managing the sector also do know. So it then comes to the question, why aren't we able to stop all of these loopholes? Is this something that you could prefer some reasons why we're not able to do the right things?
Like I said, I maybe try and bring the ECG management to explain why this is difficult. I know they have challenges, but I think this year they've been trying to do a lot of revenue mobilization and also make sure that they aggressively go after people who are owing them. And also, I mean, there is this, they are even trying to give some flat rates to customers who do not have meters as of now, so that at least they will capture them into their system. But a lot needs to be done. Mind you, as I explained to you, they are required to collect 98% of every amount of power they buy from the IPPs. That's the regulatory benchmark. So any difference between whatever they're able to do now and that 98% ultimately adds up to this debt. I think they put in a number of measures, and maybe the ECG top executive will be able to explain to you some of the measures that they need to put in place to be able to help solve this problem once and for all. If we don't do that, it's going to persist.
I've heard some analysts who have also sort of fault the tariff structure we have in this country as having to play a role in the sort of debt we accumulate in the sector. What is the real impact of our tariff structure in the situation we find ourselves in?
When you say tariff structure, what exactly do you mean? What are the analysts saying? And at this stage, maybe it's better I disclose that, I mean, I am also a commissioner of the PURC. So when it comes to tariff, please get a little bit more specific. When you say analysts are saying...
Some people have said that we may have to now discuss about paying realistic tariffs. Else, we would always find ourselves where we are.
So the problem is what we mean by realistic tariff. Okay, so based on, I don't know whether you follow how the regulators arrive at the tariff that we pay, but basically once a regulator determines what we call the total power requirement that we need to supply within a given period of time, which is normally based on what we call the annual supply plan, they cost that and add all the losses and determine what we call the total revenue requirement. It's based on that. It's based on the total revenue requirement that we share the revenues to all the end users to be able to recover the money. When we do adjustment, we're supposed to correct for the differences between the assumptions that we use in setting the tariff in the first place and what ultimately the actuals are. So if we're looking at the supply plan, then the tariffs that are announced are actually cost reflective. They are actually cost reflective. But you recall that I said earlier on that there are some of the plans for which we have valid binding PPAs, contractual agreements that do not end up in the supply plan, because if you add the what we call the reserve margins to that, we still have some idle capacity. Those are the payments that the Ministry of Finance for some time now has been paying directly to the IPPs. But I mean, when we talk about realistic tariff, I believe we need to unpack it so that we understand exactly what we're talking about. PURC protects not just the interests of the power producers, but also consumers. So once they build in the reserve margins into the total annual power requirement and determine the amount of money that we need, we'll factor in all the fuel mix, factor in all the exchange rates and all of that. That's what the PURC announces. Okay, so as far as the PURC is concerned, based on the actual energy needed plus some reserve margins, the tariffs are realistic. Okay. The methodology and everything, and they are cost reflective because we capture all relevant costs in that tariff. And please, I encourage you to go to the PURC website to read the tariff decisions and all the guidelines that we use there. But there is some amount of power that they don't find their way into the supply plan, because assuming that we need about 17,000 gigawatt hours of electricity as our total demand for this year, and we have 25,000 gigawatt hours. The regulator will have to protect you and I as well. So we can put the entire 25,000 gigawatts. That's what, for some time now, for a number of years now, the Ministry of Finance is consistently making those payments, or they are supposed to make those payments as part of the Energy Sector Recovery Program, so that we will get rid of all the unwanted capacity. Okay, but in terms of what we actually pay, I've heard some experts recently saying that our tariffs are not cost reflective. I beg to differ. But even at this level, that we still think that the tariffs are not cost reflective, industry and all other players are also complaining, because if you consider the electricity as an input, most of the industries are suffering, and they are also suffering. Their rates are higher than residential consumers for the simple reason that there's some cross subsidy where they pay a little bit more for what the people we consider to be poor, who are basically using electricity for comfort at our homes. Okay, so maybe we can continue with this discussion. I know the PURC is actually doing all these engagement with stakeholders to explain exactly how they arrive at the tariff. If you look at the quarterly adjustments that are going on, I know people are concerned, but the quarterly adjustments are always supposed to correct for any shortfall over the preceding quarter. And that's why PURC is committed to doing that. So as far as what we determine to be the total revenue requirement is concerned, I think they are the costs that the PURC is admitted into the tariff, and those are true costs which are being adjusted for in the tariffs on a quarterly basis. But there are some other costs that do not find their way into the tariff setting methodology, which some other stakeholders will have to pick up.
Now, recently you mentioned, you alluded to that earlier, that the ECG has done some debt collection. The IPPs have been citing that in all of their engagement. Now, look, we've heard that the ECG has gone out and has retrieved this amount. Is this something you're looking at too, that the ECG could say that, okay, well, this is how much you received, we can make this available to you to ensure that the power plant do not go down tomorrow?
Again, I wouldn't even attempt to speak for ECG. But I honestly believe that if the money they collected were to be sitting there, I'm sure they would have sorted them out by now. You recall that some of the reasons that the ECG gave all of us is the fact that, we rely a lot on gas. And because for a very long time, we don't even factor light crude when we are doing the tariff pricing. But because of the shutdowns and some of the challenges they had from Nigeria, they had to buy some cargoes of liquid fuel. And I believe they may have pre-financed those or something like that. But I think the ECG will speak a lot more to that. And I invite them. I think these days they are open to discuss some of this issue. But I don't think that the money they collected, I've once heard the ECG MD saying that the monies are owed to a certain bank, that the banks are, as soon as the money hit the account, the banks are taking those monies away. So it's a very, very complex issue. It's a nuanced discussion that we need to have. Probably some of the money they said they are collected, probably they didn't collect, or some of them are promissory notes or something like that. I don't know. But clearly, whatever money they've collected, if it were to be sitting in that account, I'm sure they would have sorted them out by now. But let's leave this conversation bearing in mind that it's not them versus us. Okay, we all have a role to play, and let me use this your platform to make an appeal that let's fulfill our part of the bargain. When we say electricity, we all pay for electricity. We make a very huge assumption, thinking that maybe those of us who are complying, but a lot more people are also stealing power. Okay. A lot more people are bypassing their meters. A lot more people are doing illegal connections, sometimes in connivance with the people who are supposed to arrest them anyway. But if all of us decide to behave as responsible consumers of electricity, I believe a bulk of the problem will be solved, because the non-technical losses which are attributable to some of the problems that we're talking about, with our collective effort, we should be able to address.
Okay. Now, just before I let you go, recently the governments agreed to or signed an agreement with AXA. Now, one thing in there, that the PPA structure says, take and pay with 40% dispatch guarantee on dependable capacity. What does that really mean?
Okay, so I mean, I don't know where you got that PPA from, but I mean, if I understand the English that you just read to me, take and pay means that, unlike take or pay, it means that I pay only when I say that I need your power, okay? But if they say you are guaranteeing 40% dispatch, then invariably it's 40% take or pay, okay? So. I mean, what it means is that it's take and pay, but when I bring the plant, I mean, you are guaranteeing me that for 40% of the time when I'm available, you dispatch me, you nominate me, the terminology they use. Because when they are competing plants, is sometimes they have a ranking order, merit dispatch order, that determines which plants should come online and which ones shouldn't come online. It is very possible that probably because of the commercial agreements, they will be back at the end of the queue, in which case they might not be able to even pay for their variable cost associated with the running of the business. So the 40% guaranteed dispatch means that, okay, when I'm available, even though my plant is 100%, you are telling me that at every point in time, when I tell you that I'm available, you dispatch 40% of my capacity. And so even though it's take and pay, it means that you are promising that at every point in time, you're going to take 40% of what then you pay for the 40% that you are taking from them.
But isn't this part of the reasons why we are where we are?
Not quite. I mean, we are where we are because the take and pay are quite different from the take or pay.
Now, I'm referring to the 40% of it, which of course you explained earlier that it's close to take or pay. That 40% of it, if you're available, I'll take it. Whatever it is, I'll pay for the 40% of it, isn't it?
Yes. So I mean, the good news here is that very soon we will need every available generation capacity. Okay, because we are teetering on the brink of exhausting what we've been calling the excess capacity for some time now. So by the time, I don't know the time frame, by the time the plant will be available, we would need that. Okay. But we need to be sure that we, like the problem you're talking about, we need to avoid a situation where we don't have a plan and we are contracting generation assets without any clear focus in mind, okay? The Energy Commission is mandated to do the system planning in terms of the forecasting, okay? They have the Integrated Power Supply Master Plan, which should be our reference Bible, knowing when we need to add and how much we need to be adding at every point in time. Okay. Let's stick to that and make sure that, and please pay attention. You guys are powerful. Just once the new version is around, just make sure that anything you hear, you go and match and see whether indeed we need those generation assets or not. But clearly, we need to start planning for the future demand. If we're doing 10% annual growth and you factor in all the reserve margins and you look at the dependable capacity, I think we should start looking at when we are adding new assets to our generation. Bearing in mind that it takes averagely 36 months to get a new power plant, thermal plant built and operational.
Okay, grateful to you, but kindly hold on for me. The president, when he recently commissioned that bulk power supply point, made it a point that he's not sure there will be doomsday in this country. As we look up to the clock ticks to the closure of the deadline that the IPPs gave to Parliament, will the government really hold on to this promise by the president? Listen.
This project is an excellent illustration of the strong cooperation that links the Republic of Ghana and the Kingdom of Japan, which we cherish very much. My gratitude goes also to the Electricity Company of Ghana for providing access to part of the compound of its primary substation E, which facilitated the construction of this Accra Central bulk supply project. I also wish to thank all traditional leaders, as well as the Ghana Railway Development Authority, for access to the transmission line right of way. I further express gratitude to the leadership of the Presbyterian Church of Ghana and families in this area who ceded part of their lands to pave way for the building of the transmission tower that provides a critical connection point from the bulk supply point for onward connection to power supply. I want to reassure all of you that my government will continue to work towards keeping the lights on, in spite of the global dynamics of energy pricing, because the alternative is not an option. We are not going back to doomsday. We'll leave that to President Mahama. I'm convinced and confident that our nation is on the right path. Despite our challenges and with God on our side, I have the firm belief that we shall succeed in this enterprise.
So that is President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo there. Now we're asking you for your, expectation of what is going to happen. We put this question on our Facebook page that Dumso looms. Chamber of IPPs direct members to cut power supply from July 1, 2023. What's your take on this? Let's look at what some of you have put up there. Now, Abdullah Prince Abubakar says the government should give them their Charles Opokun 1. I don't want my light to go off. What is the meaning of Charles Opokun there? Well, Robert Jebu says they are right. After all, they are not Father Christmas. The destroyers of this country are listening. If only they are aware of this and approved this, then we are good to go. By the way, they are just back from Asin North. Probably fatigue set in, okay? Georgina Tamaklo says, ironically, the big men's have standby generators. Okay. Elvis Kojo Lecha says, my take is that they should cut it. Oh, really? Okay. Amayeto Christian. I can't read what you, but it says, Agbajanyilo. I don't know what that means. Anyway. The Govt, Sasoma, Raymond, Jeremiah says, they should cut those who chop the ESLA money meant for this, and not me, who contributed to ESLA to paying such debts. All right. Kofi Ishmael says, okay, I think that's, okay, will Yvonne and Sarkodie lead demonstrations when this doomsday starts? Okay. Michael Nyako Senior says, do they pay our bills for us? That's a question he's asking. Ephraim K says, well, look, God help our leaders. So instead of paying debt, they take the money to Asin North and distribute to people. Keke. They did not win too. Is it the IMF money, by the way? If not, where did they get the money from? I thought they said Ghana has no money. That is why we went to the IMF. So that's some of the comment, or those are some of the comments that some of you shared with us. Message is still with me. So you heard the concerns of Ghanaians there. Will you be shocked if government is not able to reach any agreement with the IPPs and that the power plant are shut off tomorrow?
Well, it's based on what the president said a couple of weeks ago that I'm sure they will find a solution to this. I've already told you that without the IPPs, we don't have enough on our own. BRA's assets will not be enough to meet our demand, so we need them. So if they shut off their plants, it means that we're going back to doomsday. And what was doomsday? Doomsday was as a result of lack of generation, okay? We didn't have enough to meet our demand. Okay. So if somebody says that I've shut my plants down because you owe me and the lights go up, it's also doomsday in disguise. So I just want to believe that a solution will be found. I'm quite optimistic and I hope a solution will be found. But let me just say one quick thing, something that one of is it WhatsApp?
It was Facebook, man.
Facebook, yeah. I've heard this ESLA thing. I've heard this debate about ESLA. I mean, do you know that there's an annual report on ESLA that is presented to Parliament every year and is downloadable from the Ministry of Finance's website? Okay, so don't let us, I know sometimes we don't trust our leaders, but Parliament receives a report from them every year. If you go to the Ministry of Finance's website right now, the report for 2022 is there. They tell us how much they collected and what they use the money for. If we have a problem, we can question what the money was used for. But they tell us exactly how we receive the money. And we need to just make sure that sometimes we don't just muddy the waters because of some of the problems that we do have. I believe the ESLA money is very well accounted for. And you see, the energy sector is one area that the bank and the IMF are quite interested in that sector. I believe it's clear that we were misusing the ESLA funds. I'm not sure they would have gotten away with it because they know that one of our problems is the energy sector. So I think the ESLA money, we can trace how much has been received and how the money has been utilized. So maybe let's leave ESLA out and let's figure out how we're going to find the money to be able to sort them out. But I also would like to plead with the IPPs. I don't know where they're going to find $500 million within if they have it, I believe, $500 million is a lot of money. If
it's close to the 600 million we got from the IMF recently.
Exactly. It's almost like saying that give us everything that we got from IMF and before we continue to give you power. I think that there's been a long relationship, and I believe that they should be able to.
But the thing is that they also need liquid to stay afloat. They are in business. If without the liquid, they cannot continue producing, and that's why it's important that government pays for whatever it takes.
Oh, you please don't misunderstand me. I mean, they've even tried by not demanding 100% and say they need 30%. Okay, because that's what they're entitled to. They've actually produced, you have received the invoices, it's been okay that you owe me that much. I mean, elsewhere, proper business practices, they will turn off the plugs.
Okay.
But really, when you have a country that is just coming out from an IMF program or just gotten an IMF program where even we are unable to even pay bondholders their money, we must be in some crisis, okay? So I think they may probably have to use that as a basis, but I mean, that's entirely their decision.
Okay.
But I'm happy they are talking, okay? Because last week they told us that they hadn't had any meeting with the government, but now that they are talking, I believe something positive will come out of it, and hopefully.
Okay. All right.
We'll
over to you, Mr. Ishmael Ejekum, for joining us here on the Pulse here on the journey.